Hey everybody, this is Drew Bennett from Big Damn Kid, and I did decide that I'm going to go in between the Transformers comics and the G.I. Joe and the Transformers 4-issue limited series, because the events that take place in Transformers are happening simultaneously with what's happening in G.I. Joe. So I've read through the first one and the second one, and also issue number 26 of the Transformers. You'll notice that the last one I did was issue number 25 because it was January 25th, and I've been doing one a day. Now the numbering is going to be all off, but we need to get into what's happening with G.I. Joe and the Transformers, as well as what's happening with the Transformers. I didn't collect all the G.I. Joe, so I can't really cross over with G.I. Joe as well, but I can point out what's happening with the G.I. Joe comics, as well as what's happening with the Transformers comics, and how they all tie together. So this takes place prior to the events of issue number 24. That is because Optimus Prime is still alive in this issue. So this takes place before that. It also takes place before, obviously before 25, where Megatron blasts himself into oblivion. So we'll get into it. As you can see, it's not going to be a good day for Bumblebee. No, it's not going to be a good day for Bumblebee. The issue is called Blood on the Tracks, and we start off at Fort Lewis in Seattle, Washington. It's a temporary base for the world's first mobile solar/nuclear power plant. The things that they come up with. Why make this mobile? Why would a power plant need to be mobile? And it's part nuclear, it's part solar. They make some convoluted stuff in these issues. Anyway, there is a protest going on where there are people outside of this because they're protesting it. You know, they don't want the Chernobyl to happen. They don't want all these other things to happen. So they're out there having a peaceful protest, mostly. Because if you can see from the image here, there are some familiar faces in the crowd, especially if you're familiar with G.I. Joe and COBRA. And you can see the Dreadnoks are there, and they are causing a little bit of ruckus. They're throwing bottles, and meanwhile the rest of the people are being peaceful, but these three guys are, you know, they're causing some trouble there. So in this limousine that's pulling into the restricted area, we have General Abernathy, Hawk. We got Hawk. We got three guys who, you know, they're basically stuffed shirts that we don't really know much about. But one of them mentions, it says, "It's all that I imagined, and more. Mr. Blackrock will surely be pleased." So G.B. Blackrock, as we know him from the Transformers comics, has something to do with this power station. Why he's not there to see it lift off is anybody's guess. But we'll find out in the next issue. So this Power Station Alpha is where they are, and that's what Power Station Alpha looks like. It basically looks like a space shuttle. What the heck is this thing? Anyway, there is a senator with the group, Senator Larkin, Senator Barbara Larkin, and she is the one who gave the go-ahead for this project, and she's there to oversee that it works fine. There's a little bit of sparks going on between Hawk and Barbara. So we see that. Then we see Mutt, and we see Junkyard and Scarlett, and they're talking, you know, that they got to make this thing look good because, let's get me in here, they got to make this look good because there was a bad spectacle that happened in Springfield. And as you know, from G.I. Joe, Springfield is that city or that town that is really a cover for COBRA. And there must have been something that occurred there in issue number 50 of G.I. Joe. I don't know what it is because I actually started getting G.I. Joe around issue 60. I didn't do G.I. Joe right off the bat like I did for Transformers. I got into G.I. Joe later, so I didn't get all of the issues. But I did have some back issues where they had collected ones, so I did kind of get some of those, but I don't believe all of them. Alright, so we cut over to the Ark, and at the Ark, Optimus Prime is having a conversation with Bumblebee. And we have Optimus Prime is now going to send Bumblebee out to observe the power station. So Bumblebee has this mission assigned to him because Bumblebee is the biggest one. I mean, is the best one for stealth. He helps get the information about Devastator so that they could build the aerial bots, whom we actually see in the background there, and we actually see Ratchet working on one of the aerial bots, and I am assuming that he's fixing them all up after their stint in being captured by Rat back in issue number 23. Rat had the aerial bots, and then Circuit Breaker, stuck a whole bunch of robots together, and so Ratchet's now sorting them all out. Bumblebee takes off to go to Washington to observe this power station so he can report back to the Autobots, make sure that there aren't any shenanigans happening. And as Bumblebee is driving along, he's really kind of feeling a bit sorry for himself again, that he is not an aerial bot, or he's going to these things and he has such mundane missions. They're a waste of time. He wants to do something more exciting, but he can't, basically because he's the smallest, and he's suited for other things. And one of those things is for observation. He is one that can infiltrate into society a lot easier than any of the other Transformers. Everybody loves a VW Bug. They're so cute. And so we're back at the protest. The Dreadnoks are hanging around, and they are getting bored out of their minds because they're really supposed to be just there to observe too. But they decide, you know what? We're just going to go and cause our own trouble. And so they get onto their motorcycles. They cut open the chain link fence and they go tearing in. Then they get onto the tarmac where the dignitaries are with G.I. Joe. They start causing some havoc around there, shooting up the place, and Hawk saves Senator Larkin. He goes running off and saves her, keeps her safe. Roadblock and Beachhead are there, and they're fighting against the Dreadnoks. Dreadnoks kind of have the upper hand for a moment. Looks like Flint's there too. So we're seeing. I'm trying to remember all my G.I. Joe guys, and I should know all of them. But we got Roadblock, Beachhead, and I'm pretty sure that's Flint right there. And so they're fighting the Dreadnoks, and then Torch comes by and he scorches poor Junkyard. That gets Mutt all upset, so he's starts firing at them as well. Beachhead is saving some of the dignitaries. Then Scarlett and Snake Eyes come by. They knock out Torch and Ripper, knock them right off of their motorcycles, and they're gonna take care of the Dreadnoks. But Buzzer is over on the other side. He's captured one of the dignitaries, and he's got his buzzsaw gun, his chainsaw gun, and he's threatening to cut off the head of this dignitary, and unless G.I. Joe lets them go right then and there. So Joe lets them go because they want to save this innocent guy, and they're going to go follow the Dreadnoks. So off on Cobra Island, which is somewhere in the Gulf of Mexico, Cobra Commander is watching the proceedings. Where are they getting these feeds? I have no idea. But he's upset with Zartan, and he's holding him responsible for the actions of the Dreadnoks because they're moving up the timetable on Cobra. They're supposed to just be observe. They're supposed to just observe. And so Cobra Commander is there, and he's talking about Serpentor wanting to usurp his leadership. And he can't have any of these blunders happening because that's just going to give Serpentor more fodder in which to overthrow him. So as Cobra Commander says, contact Zarana and have her get those knuckleheads and capture those knuckleheads. Not capture them, but get them away from G.I. Joe because they know G.I. Joe is going to be coming after them. So the Dreadnoks speed off. They're going to catch up with Zarana. And we'll see that in a few moments. But we also see Cobra's not the only one who's observing what's going on. We have Megatron observing, and he's a little amused by this, and he decides, we're going to get Dirge and Bombshell to come in. So Dirge and Bombshell come in, and he sends them off to Power Station Alpha, and he tells Bombshell he's got to reformat one of his Cerebro shells so that he can take over Power Station Alpha with one of the Cerebro shells. And so they're going to capture that so that they can once again power Cybertron and conquer the world. So Dirge is going to transport Bombshell, and the two of them fly off, and Megatron's "Don't fail me." So we get to the next part where the Dreadnoks are speeding away at the same time where Bumblebee shows up, and he is coming towards the base to observe where the Dreadnoks are coming, and they decide that they're not just going to ride down the road. They're going to slash tires and burn trucks full of logs, and then Buzzer is going to try to slice open Bumblebee. He's coming right at Bumblebee. He's going to slice open Bumblebee, but Bumblebee grows his legs and jumps out of the way, which flips out Buzzer, and then we see that the Joes are stuck in traffic in the back, probably because the Dreadnoks caused a whole bunch of pileups and trouble. The Dreadnoks then pull into a big wheel, an 18-wheeler, where Zorana is, and Zorana, they tell her that they just saw a vehicle grow legs and jump out of the way, and that's crazy. And she's like, well, it might just be possible. So Zorana must be paying attention to the news, because G.I. Joe obviously isn't, knowing that there are. Well, we'll see in a moment. But Zorana must be paying attention that there are Transformers and robots in the that are happening, because it's been 25 issues with Transformers. They've been around for a few months now, and so I would think that somebody like G.I. Joe, the Elite Special Unit Mission Force, would know that there are these giant alien robots, or these robots, they don't know if they're aliens yet because they're still wondering who's controlling them. They would have seen the Robot Master, broadcasts and stuff like that. They would have been aware. But in this, they are not, as we'll see. So the Joes, they don't get to, the Dreadnoks escape. They go back to the base. Bumblebee pulls up. He's at the base, and he observes the Power Station Alpha, and he's there overnight, and yet suffers another indignity, wherein he gets a parking ticket because he's been there overnight. And he can't just drive away because that would give him away. So he's feeling again down on himself some more, and so we got Power Station Alpha. They're getting it ready for launch. Mutt talks to Junkyard, tells him to run ahead, and he'll be right along. The Power Station Alpha turns from this power station to this giant flying plane. Again, why does this need to be a mobile station? It's a power station. Unless they're gonna, why would they move it from place to place to place to place? It doesn't seem like that's very stable or smart. But anyway, that's what happens. Junkyard finds the little boy who had been with his mother. His name's Anthony, and Anthony's bored out of his mind. But he finds Junkyard. They become friends, and they play catch. They play frisbee together. So he's having fun. I don't know why Junkyard is allowed to just go run off to do his own thing, but that's what Mutt, said. Go ahead and do your own thing. The power station is about to take off, and Bumblebee is enjoying that very much. He says it's a beautiful sight. He can hardly believe his electro circuits, but again, there still isn't much for him to do. And he's quite wrong, because as that exact moment, Dirge and Bombshell come flying overhead, and they notice Bumblebee. They see Bumblebee, and they're gonna mess with him. They're gonna cause a distraction so Bumblebee doesn't see what their real intention is. So Bombshell comes flying down, and he shoots a Cerebro shell right at the little boy, Anthony. And Anthony gets zapped with the Cerebro shell. Instantly, he leaves Junkyard and starts walking towards Power Station Alpha as it is taking off. Again, with all this tight security, the protesters out behind a fence, Where is the security? How is this kid allowed? Because we can see what's going to happen with him. What Bombshell's intention is, and we'll see that in a few pages. So Bumblebee's watching, and suddenly, there's a bug that's flying around. He's like, "You're almost as annoying as an Insecticon," and he realizes it's Bombshell. He radios the Ark, and Optimus Prime sends the aerial bots out to help him as backup. So the aerial bots are now all fixed up by Ratchet. They head out to take care of providing backup for Bumblebee. Meanwhile, back at the power station launch, Bombshell is guiding this young boy to walk underneath the tracks of the moving power station. Come on now. There. Underneath the tracks of the moving power station. Junkyard tries to pull him away. Nobody observes this. The highly trained Special Forces unit of G.I. Joe doesn't realize that this little boy is walked out onto the tarmac. I'm sure that Junkyard was barking. Nobody realizes this. And the only one who sees it is Bumblebee. So Bumblebee has to go and transform. He rushes out onto the tarmac and he saves the boy at the last possible second. Saves the boy, but at the same time Snake Eyes swings into action because he sees it. Swings into action, turns off the space station, the power station. I keep saying space station because it looks like a space shuttle. He sees the power station and turns it off, and Bumblebee then, gives the boy to his mother, and G.I. Joe tells him to freeze. Bumblebee then tries to explain, "Hey, look, I was just trying to help. You don't understand what's going on here." Meanwhile, all the weapons are trained on Bumblebee. They tell Senator Larkin, says that, we can't let this power station fall into anyone's hands. We either have to destroy it or something. We have to make sure that nobody can do this. So, we'll have to sort it. Hawk says we'll have to sort it all out later. We have no time for debate. So G.I. Joe takes aim and they obliterate poor Bumblebee. Poor Bumblebee just gets destroyed point blank by G.I. Joe's weapons. And, he's still functioning a bit, and he says, last thing he says is that I have failed. Through all of this chaos, Bombshell then flies into the Power Station Alpha, inserts that new Cerebro shell, the one that he reformatted, so that he can take over Power Station Alpha. The Joes then, they disperse the crowd, and the Power Station Alpha has been returned to the base, and now they're looking over the remains of Bumblebee, and so they're picking up the pieces so they can analyze him. But Scarlett says you may not get the chance, because there seems to be more trouble, and they see some aircraft flying in, and it's the aerial bots. And as the aerial bots fly in, they merge into Superion, and Superion, demands that he is there to pick up his ally, the fallen ally. He's there to pick up the remains of Bumblebee. And, G.I. Joe's like, well, what do we do now? Because Bumblebee was a small robot. He's not even that much larger than a human. Whereas Superion is probably about 60 feet tall or so. Predacon's bigger, Predaking's bigger, so he's probably about 80 feet tall. But Superion is probably only about 60. So we'll find out what's going to happen in the next issue of G.I. Joe and the Transformers. I read issue 26 of Transformers and issue number 2 of G.I. Joe and Transformers. I'm going to do the issue number 2 of G.I. Joe and the Transformers because that then ties in with what's happening with the events of issue number 24, and I believe a little bit later, issue number 25. Issue number 26 takes place after the events of 24. So I'm trying to figure out the whole timeline. I got to read all the comics, but I haven't had a chance to do all that. It is a busy time around here. That'll do it for me. This is Drew Bennett from Big Damn Kid. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook as Big Damn Kid. You can also find me at BigDamnKid.com, where I do a full write-up of every one of these issues. And I'll be doing issue number 2 tomorrow. and doing videos every single day. Please subscribe. I'd love it if you leave me a comment. Let me know what you think about these reviews and what you thought about the comics. Did you read them when you were growing up? Please subscribe, tell your friends, and thanks for watching.